Hurling on Off the Ball with Bord Gáis Energy, proud sponsors of the Senior Hurling Championship.
Tommy Walsh is, before I met him and got to know him, he was already one of the greatest hurlers that ever played the game. 9 All-Stars in a row, forwards, midfields, back. I mean, he was just the complete package. The most heart of any player I've ever played with, and probably the most genuine player I'd ever played with as well in terms of the effort he gives on the field. I think that the best thing about Tommy is he's just unbelievable crack off the pitch.
I was lucky enough to play with Paul from 2011 right up until 2014. The one thing I'd say about Paul, an old school teacher of ours, Dennis Philpott from Cork, said you have to go after the ball like you loved it. And Paul Murphy loved going after the ball. He was the cornerback that he got the ball before you did, and he was an absolute joy to play in front of for 3 or 4 years. One of the best pound for pound cornerbacks that has played the game, and it's great to see him again.
Yeah, so Tom, it's strange enough when you're coming in the door there. Do you know when you're coming into Nolan Park after all the years of training? Like, it's kind of funny the way the feelings come back at you as you're coming in. It's like you're almost coming into training. But I was only thinking, the dressing room you would have went into when you started was completely different to me. Like, when I first called into training was around 2008, 2009. So what year were you called in?
I came in, I suppose, Paul, 2002, so after the Leinster final.
Yeah.
They're after barely getting over the line by a point. So they brought in a few lads after that Leinster final trying to, push it on another bit. So, yeah, it was the dressing room over there, and there was huge characters there, you had Andy Comfort, Charlie Carter, Tots McAvoy, yeah. Peter Barry, no more I'd say than when you came in. They're just heroes that you never thought maybe you'd play with.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're marking them or sitting beside them over in training, and just huge characters.
I always found it kind of surreal when, when you're going from being a supporter, and every player kind of has it, but you don't think about it at the time. You think, sure, I might get a call in with Kilkenny, you wouldn't know. But it kind of happens fairly quick then when it does come about, and you end up like that. I remember the first day I went in, it was over in Kieran's, we were actually training, and it was actually Martin Fogarty called me. I thought it was a lad pranking me at the start. I said, there's no way. And I'd never spoken to Martin Fogarty. And do you know the way Martin Fogarty is? He'd sneer you straight away. So I was like, this is someone winding me up. And sure, that was 2008, so you were really going well. So I was kind of thinking, I was hurling intermediate with the club at the time. Yeah. I said, what are they looking for me for? And I was, granted, I was with the under-21s with Kilkenny. But I remember going in and I was poking across the field with Hoagie, with Brian Hogan. Yeah. I remember being pure nervous because I was like, this fella's going to think I'm a clown if I missed the ball, if I had to.
He did think that.
He still thinks that. But I remember that, but was there any of that for you? When I went in, it was stacked with the whole lot of E, and you're nearly nervous talking to boys. But obviously you mentioned a few boys there, but was there anyone in particular that was you were kind of going, you really wanted to impress nearly?
Yeah, actually wanted to impress them all really. You had DJ there, he came back in the same time, and just brilliant to me, brilliant to all the young fellas that time. So that was 2002, so Kilkenny were very strong at the time. They were after winning the All-Ireland 2000, so they were one of the great teams at the time, so they were all stars.
Yeah.
Henry was only there since 99, but already he was after winning a couple of All-Stars, being brilliant in the 2000 All-Ireland final. 2001 then, I suppose it was the one that probably changed Cody's mindset, was when Galway beat him in the semi-final.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of a changeover. That's probably why we came in then as young fellas then in 2002. And I came in later on the summer, but the panel was hungry and fresh. So it had the young fellas coming in, but it also had the experience of the characters. Andy Comfort was the captain that year. He was a phenomenal captain. A leader that, is probably one of the first great leaders that I came across. He put in his head where another lad would put his hurl in the dressing room. If he called out your name, he kind of had a thing that time. He might mention a few names that he expected, to turn up this Sunday and put in a performance. And if he mentioned your name,
you were
expected to do it, and you expected yourself to turn it up, because it meant a lot coming from the captain, and a lad that everyone looked up to. And he put in a huge effort that year as regards from probably November, December. He was just led from the front, and it's not always easy as captain.
No. And, he was a very good captain as well. It suited Andy Comfort.
And then you had Peter Barry then. He was a lad we all looked up to because he would die for you, And on the hurling field, I remember JJ often said that, he said to him when he was young, you just go on out in front and try and win the ball, because if you miss it, I'll be there to help you. And he didn't just say it in the dressing room. He was there every time. and backed it up. And Peter Barry was probably, Cody's general
Yeah.
in them early days, and he was the role model. You had to look after yourself, off the field, on the field, every way.
He was always mentioned though, wasn't he, Peter Barry? Like, I never shared the dressing room with Peter Barry, but like, there was a few kind of names that when we were, big matches, Brian would bring a few names out, like, and mention this lad or that lad, but Peter Barry was always one of the lads there. And I think for the likes of myself, maybe the likes of Richie Hogan, these lads, I don't think shared the dressing room with him. You always kind of looked at the likes of Peter Barry. He was a lad who I only ever saw on the field, but you always kind of wondered, what was that? But I suppose it's one of the biggest compliments you could give to a player, to say that, long after they were gone, their name was mentioned in the dressing room,
Yeah.
Like you were saying that when you came on first, Brian was probably looking to bring a few younger lads into the dressing room, and kind of younger lads bring a kind of an edge to the whole thing as well, and they maybe inject a new bit of blood into it, because sometimes when a younger player comes in, if they come in with a bit of disregard nearly into the dressing room, that they don't care who they're marking, that can nearly freshen the whole thing up big time, and just always thought that it was funny when you said that Brian was always kind of looking out for lads like that, who, who could I bring in here now and would kind of shake things up. Because I remember the year eventually when I made it, 2011, I remember kind of being dropped 2 or 3 of the years. Maybe it was that I came on training panel 2008, League 2009 dropped, League 2010 was dropped after that. I remember just kind of saying, look, I'm sick of being dropped. I'm going to go in here now and not do anybody any favours, And I always remember out in Ballaraggett, we were training one night. I don't know where you'd be doing the runs. We used to do these runs. Remember, we used to do a big square, so you might run 100 metres. You get to the far end, you could do 30 push-ups. You get up and you'd sprint. But like, it was kind of a pace of like 75-80%. Remember Mick Dempsey? We shouted at you. I remember I'd done serious winter training that winter, and I came back fresh, and I said, I'm going to hit the ground running here with these boys. And I took off. I remember Larks was in the group. And Larks ate me for the whole night because I kept running at 100%.
Showing off.
But I was there going, there's no way. I'm not doing anybody any favours here. If a fella's suffering because I'm running faster than him, then let him suffer. I remember Larks then. Larks would be grumpy at the best of times. Larks was like, will you slow down, will you? It's 75%. This is all I could hear. But I remember that night, you're obviously in the zone when you're training, but I remember seeing the corner of my eye, kind of Cody laughing. Like, very rarely you see him laughing, but he loved that kind of competitiveness. Or, lads were doing a tackling drill and the ball would be going up and back and forth. But sometimes on the night, there could be 2 lads, like Joey Holden and Colin Fenley could be there, and the ball mightn't go back across the other side of the field because someone gets a block, gets a hook. Yeah. And suddenly Brian would be turned and he'd be zoned in on this, that these 2 lads, it's one ball. Yeah. And I always thought that that was something that he looked for. But like, in fairness, when you go back there, let's say, to the time that both of us were in the dressing room, like, there's so many times you can think of all that brilliant stuff where you just knew, like, God, we're really going at it here, like, and that when it came to Sunday or Saturday, playing great teams, like the great teams we played against, that, well, you know what, we're doing everything we possibly can here to actually go out and beat this team. And it meant tearing each other apart, really, didn't it? Yeah,
well, like in 2008 against Watford, like, we had 3 or 4 future hurler here sitting on the bench. And they weren't 18-year-olds. Yeah. Like, just, that was the competitiveness of it. Brian and the management, Mick and Martin that time, and all of Noel Ski and Johnny Welsh, like, they were able to extract everything out of everybody, I felt. Yeah. And if you weren't able to give it then, if you didn't have that competitiveness in it, you were gone. Yeah. And they didn't drop you. You kind of knew yourself then at that stage. Yeah. Because you got a chance if you were good enough and you gave it everything. Sure, what age you were in 2011?
Well, in 2011 I was 22 at that stage. 2008 I was with the 21s and I was 19 I was called in. The Kilkenny team at that time was so competitive, and across all clubs in Kilkenny, there was huge competition, and there was such a massive pool of players really to pick from. But coming in those times, I just remember going, like, I was sitting on the sideline there, and you were proud as punching one way as a 19-year-old, because you were like, gee, I didn't think I was capable of coming in here with these group of lads. I always say 2011, like, that was kind of the dream All-Ireland for me, because I was in a back line of, it was me, Noel Hickey, Jackie, yourself, Brian and JJ. Like, I felt like a tourist in a corner back. I was like, hold on, I know why the rest of the boys are here, but why am I here? But when I was corner back, I always thought, well, I have one job here, in that if it's coming in on top of Noel Hickey, the other lad isn't going to catch it over Noel. Noel, like, used to give lads a torrid time. Like, he just so physical on that. But then you were unbelievable at competing at the balls there. So, like, I always just went, well, time your run here, because the boys at the worst is going to break, and I'm going to be onto the break, and that's my job. I'm not going up competing with balls, and even the photo with you with the catch in 2011, I'm blurred out in the background because I'm running in for the break. Sure, the break never came. The one where you go up and catch it, like, I always was saying that, I had the greatest view of that catch that day.
I always thought of the teams, I came in 0-2, And I felt that I played with, you know, when you're talking to world-class superstars, you're talking about Pele, Messi, Maradona, Tom Brady, LeBron, Michael Jordan, you know, golf, Tiger, and I played with 5 of them in hurling.
Yeah.
Yeah, DJ first, then Henry, then JJ, then TJ, and Eddie Kerr.
You hurled Eddie Kerr? There's a lot there. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, he was manager. My father was on over 40, see, with Kilkenny. And Kerr was manager. So Eddie Kerr was the manager of Kilkenny over 40s. My father was on it.
Yeah.
Back and how many years ago it was then. And I hit 2 or 3 balls back to him.
And he was 10 out of 10 that night.
Looking back, when you come in here, you're talking about the very start, like I think the first thing it does, it just brings back all the memories. Like when it's full and you're in the club matches, no, because you're busy, you're talking to people and you're looking at the programme and stuff, but when you come in this type of a scenario, nobody here of a Saturday, like, so you remember everything, like, you know, and it's just, it's an incredible place really, of memories, more than that, like.
Everything was always done to make sure that a team played out here, whether it was under 10s or it was a senior team, you know. In fairness to County Board, they'd always try and get you in here if, you know, where at all possible, even if it was a final, because it added a small bit more to it, like if there was a final. And I remember we played a junior county final here in 2006, and we've been junior for, you know, 70 odd years. And like even coming in here, some of our team had never played in Nolan Park, you know. And not to say that, you know, you'd play a junior county final anywhere else, but you know what, looking back in those games, it was probably one of the only times some of the boys played in Nolan Park. Somebody's played a few more times, but just that day being here in Nolan Park, and maybe the crowd wasn't huge, but it was all your own club mates and it was all your neighbours and all this stuff. And like, but the fact that it was a final here and lads say, oh, I won a county final in Nolan Park, like that in itself, I know like some of us might went on to bigger days, but they were always special ones.
Yeah, I suppose Murph, sure, the exciting part of probably coming in the senior panel was, you know, you came to Langton's after every training, and you got a meal, and you were saying you got a choice of.
It wasn't turkey and ham anymore. It was, there's 1 or 2 other options on the menu.
That meant you're after making the cut from a minor hurler, 21 hurler to a senior hurler. But I suppose coming back in here again today, like, sure, just some of the most magical memories were in here with Langton's. And like you often hear people talking about, like, you know, as Brian's, you know, a major thing was the spirit of the group. And, you know, we often probably talk about, and probably it's about, you know, nights out after games and all, but it was probably the likes of in here was even more important again, which was 3-4 times a week after training. You're absolutely, you know, after your tongue was out after training and you're barely able to walk, at least you knew you were going down to a lovely meal with we all round a little group and just laughing and chatting and having the crack, and we wouldn't even talk about hurling.
No. Lads would be talking about Love Island and all this. that was it towards the end. It was whatever was on, like lads would be talking, everything other than hurling really, pretty much, like, you know, at the odd time, but it was what lads were watching on Netflix and all this crack, and it was probably your window then where you were sitting down, and it was another extension of the whole bonding really, wasn't it, like, you know. And then even like the nights you come in here after a match though as well, and the place would be jammed, and you know you'd be obviously off talking to your friends or whoever away from the panel, but then, you know, you'd meet you at the bar or something then, and sure was gas. It was like, oh jeez, there's Tommy now, there's Jackie, whatever. So, you know, there were so many those big nights and everything that it was just like down to stories you'd have in here, and you know, it was obviously a huge part of it. But in fairness to one thing I would say about us, often a lot of lads would ask you, you know, particularly around, you know, having a few pints and stuff, like, you know, we always, I suppose, valued what that brought to us in terms of releasing a bit of pressure after a game. You know, you spend so long building up to a game, the nerves, the pressure, you know, and after the game then you kind of, I suppose, a chance to release that pressure and talk about, you know, how the game went, all the trainings in the run up to it, and really kind of, I suppose, particularly after you won, like, mark that and say, you know, we were after working really hard the last few weeks and celebrating it, you know. And in fairness, we did do it well, like.
There was no egos.
No, there
Them
wasn't.
boys looked after you. It didn't matter whether you were 5 years younger than them or 5 years older than them.
Yeah.
You were part of their close.
Yeah.
And it meant a lot.
It did.
Especially to a young person coming in, because as you said earlier on, you're kind of coming in maybe wondering, do you even fit in this inter-county setup?
Yeah.
And suddenly then you don't feel like it for a while. But the more you get to know the lads, and then in the games themselves, then you're surviving and maybe starting to blossom.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're part of the group. Like,
yeah. So I always remember, and it kind of, I said it one time, it was at a medals night, I think it was 2014 or something. And it was out of my mouth before I realised what I said, but then I kind of said, Jesus, actually, when you think about it, it's a huge thing. I just basically said that, you could put any two players, let's say in 2014, but it applied to many years, that you could put any two players on the panel together, whether they were first year on the panel, whether it was their 10th year, put them together and they'd have a bit of crack, and they'd sit down and they'd have something in common. And when I thought about that afterwards, after saying it, I was like, that's a very rare thing to have, but if you do have it in a group of players, you're onto a good thing already, that you have such a mix where the young players feel welcomed into the group, they feel like they're a big part of it, and it feels natural and normal to be there. And also the older lads, I suppose, recognise that they have a role to play in terms of bringing them lads into it. But you think about those dressing rooms, like, get on the bus after a game or anything, you could have anybody sitting beside anybody, and it didn't matter, it didn't matter. And I think when any time, we were really flying it, that was always at the core of it, where it was just a great group mixing together. But it's funny now when you go back to being a supporter now, you've completely closed that door now. So I'd always say now that I wouldn't have a clue. My opinion of Kilkenny at the moment would be completely based off, I can't look too much back at our time because it's changed now and the game has changed as well. But you look at the lads there who are currently playing at the moment, and hurling has gone to another level in terms of physicality, in terms of even, a lot of times when we were playing it was 50-50 balls landed down. But now the systems that are in place, it is a different landscape for being a player now. And obviously Limerick have raised the bar for everything. They've raised it up and other teams now are stepping up and teams will step up. Invariably, Limerick are up there now and it won't be a case of Limerick taking a backward step. It'll be a case of other teams stepping up. And, you see with Kilkenny there, the likes of Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody, these boys, those boys could have hurled it in any generation, Hugh Lawler, all these incredible hurlers. And I'd be looking at these lads saying, they absolutely, people will look to see, is there an All-Ireland in Kilkenny at the moment, with Limerick being there? Absolutely there is, I have no doubt about it.
I believe that, you have to just, whoever you're playing next, that's who you have to gear for. And the biggest example for that was 2019. Nobody thought anyone could beat Limerick. Yeah. And Tipperary were on the other side of the draw, we'll say the semi-finals. Suddenly Kilkenny shock them in the semi-final. Tip then and Kilkenny will always be a 50-50 All-Ireland final. Tipperary are All-Ireland champions. So towards if Tipperary had to thought about that, probably logically, we can't beat Limerick.
Yeah.
But they never had to worry about them because Kilkenny beat them. So I think every county team at the moment has to think like that. The only team that we have to worry about is the next team we play. I'd always look back at under-21s as a big kind of a prediction for the future, and Cork after winning a couple under-21s and they seem to be coming. Kilkenny obviously have Adrian and Owen Cody, they've great backs in Mikey Butler and Hugh Lawler and Murph on the goal. So listen, there's always a chance, but they've brilliant players there, Kilkenny, and the future is bright because there's young players coming through every year. You look at the minor, I'm looking at Kilkenny under-15s, under-14s at the moment, just fabulous players coming up along. So you just have to, bide your time, and when the opportunity arises, like it did for Tipperary in 0-19, take it.
And patience is a huge thing with it as well. I think any player, if you give, it's no more than like you were saying earlier about selecting players for a team. You have to give a lad his opportunity and maybe be patient, and trust that. And 1 or 2 of the years is, a few years is not going to work out for Kilkenny, but being patient and allowing players to develop and bring it to another level is a huge part of it. And there's a core group of players there. Invariably, players will step away over the next few years that have won All-Irelands, and that experience will go from the dressing room. But I personally myself have great faith in the lads who are there, and you see the likes of Billy Drennan even coming through, another stylish forward, and Derek's under-20 team that won the All-Ireland as well. Again, there's great players coming through from that, and it'll take a few years. It'll take a few years for them lads to step in, but it's exciting when you see those lads coming through, and it's also exciting to step back into the stand and watch these lads develop. And your day is done, your day is finished, you'll never go back there. So enjoying these lads now, for me anyway, is the next best thing to it.
Well, Paul Murphy, his best position was right corner back, and he was a crowd favourite because no matter where the ball was, Paul was afraid of nobody. He went after it, and he was able to hit the ball 100 yards with a clearance and got the crowd on their feet. So for any Kilkenny supporter, that's why they probably loved him, because he was never hiding behind his man. He was never afraid to make mistakes. He went after the ball, and if he missed it, he just went back and won it again.
When I picture Tommy, if I was in the stand, he was right half back, jersey untucked, red helmet on him, and the hurl is, you know, you can see it's almost like a weapon. He's ready to go, he's ready to rock, and you can just see there's fire in the belly with him. You know, the stance, the pose, everything about him, you just know there's fire there. And Tommy had this ability that Henry hitting the back of the net was unbelievable in terms of lifting the crowd. You know, TJ getting the ball and putting it over from a place was unbelievable. But Tommy Walsh catching a ball, oftentimes, would nearly be the platform for us winning the match.
Hurling on Off the Ball.
With Bord Gáis Energy, proud sponsors of the Senior Hurling Championship.